Hey, my name is Matt, and today we're going to be talking about the three pillars of software projects. Maybe pillars is the wrong word, maybe it's more of constraints. Like every project has three different constraints on it. One is time, one is the budget or cost, and the third one is the quality or features of the software. Anyone in the software industry knows that software takes a lot of time to build good software. Even bad software takes a lot of time. It's one thing that we don't have enough of, that we can never get more of, and so we have to utilize people and their time to be able to get the project done. One of the things about the way we spend our time is that we need focus time as engineers and developers. There's a maker versus manager way of doing things. A manager can go from meeting to meeting to meeting and not ever run into issues. The context they need to know is all right in the meeting. But as a maker, we need long stretches of deep quality time to be able to get those features done. We are not context switching. Every time we get an email and an email notification comes in, for example, we have to go look at that email notification, see if it's something we need to address, and then we need to go back to writing our software. Sometimes we lose place of where we are, and that context switching typically takes about 15 minutes of our time. So one tip there is to turn off all email notifications, check email 2 or 3 times throughout the day, and other than that, you're not on your email. You're deep in the work. You're trying to get stuff done. You're trying to focus on the project. Another thing with time is that we are really bad at estimates. Sometimes I joke and say, well, this is going to take between an hour and a month, probably closer to a month. Because sometimes we just don't know. If the project contains things that we've done before, we can do a much better job at estimating. I think that's where Scrum and Agile process comes into place, where we can take a look at our velocity. How many points did we do last sprint? We could probably do that many points this sprint. And if our estimation is similar between the 2 sprints and the stories, we can have a fairly good idea of what we're going to accomplish that sprint. Along with estimating are the unknowns or the complexity. Sometimes we have a lot of unknowns in a project. That can really lead to the time constraints. It can make us be even worse at estimating because we don't know. We can't estimate an unknown. A lot of times in that situation, we'll time box something. Okay, let's research XYZ, we have 3 hours to do it. Come back and report what you found after the 3 hours. That way we have a known amount of time that we're going to spend on it, and we can address the situation after that time has been spent and see how we want to move forward. So those are the time constraints on a project. And even if you work at a full-time job or you build a software product or a service, you still have those constraints. Those constraints aren't as focused or as apparent as in the consulting world where I am. The second piece is the budget. How much is this going to cost? I know a lot of people think, I don't want to just give these guys a blank check. It'll be done when it's done, and you don't know when it's going to be done, and you don't know how much it's going to cost. Totally understand that. That's not really what we're trying to say. Because a project that's way over budget will get killed before it even gets deployed. We are not trying to steal anyone's money or anything like that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize the budget that's available. So a lot of times in that situation, I'll say, all right, what's your budget? Here's what we think we can get done in that time, and we'll prioritize everything, and we'll run right up to the edge of the budget, and as soon as we're done with the budget, we can release the software. Another thing about budget is we can't just throw money at the project and make it magically be successful. Adding money and people to a project has its overhead. It's not linear. You know, if I can get 13 story points done in a sprint and someone else can do the same, that doesn't mean in 2 sprints we'll get 26 points done because there is some overlap. If you increase that team to 5, that's really not going to work where you make 65 points in a sprint. That may not happen depending on how the system's set up, depending on the complexity, depending on how big the project is. You may be stepping on each other's toes. So that's the cost aspect of it. The last piece is quality or features. Quality means the number of bugs that were introduced, the maintainability of the code, things of that nature. And then features means what does the system do? We're going to focus on features because I think that's a little bit easier to understand and to talk to the points. With all software projects, we want to have a high quality code base. We don't want to introduce a bunch of bugs and we want to make sure our code works well and is highly maintainable. But with some projects, the feature list is too great for the time constraints and the budget. It's just not going to get done with the budget and the time that we have. So that's usually one of the things that falls off. Sometimes there are features that are very complex, but the management or the client doesn't really understand how complex it is yet. Sometimes the team doesn't know that either. That's where the time boxing comes in, where you can allocate a certain amount of time to discovering how complex that's going to be. Another thing that we run into is that the requirements may not be complex, but they are unknown. Maybe there's a piece, an integration piece, for example, that should be pretty simple. Maybe everything's all in place and all we got to do is hook into that API or something like that. But then we run into some issues because we're consuming that API in a method that the creators of that API didn't intend. That can lead to complexities and situations where we're burning a lot of time on something that should have been simple. So those are the three constraints on a project. We can pick two of those. We can't pick all three. What happens when someone tries to pick all three? So let's take a look at the situations where we can pick two. We've got time, we've got budget, and we've got features. So if time and budget are our constraints, we won't get as much done. Our features will be fewer than what the client wants. If we have budget and features, well, it's going to take a lot of time. We're going to take way longer than anyone wants because we're budget conscious and we're focused on the features. In that situation, we may be working part-time. Some people may contribute their time for free, or we may utilize a full-time employee for one of our clients and let them do a lot of the work because that's a constant overhead. Things like that are ways that we can kind of combat that, but time always suffers. The deadlines will not get met. The third situation is if we focus on the features and the timeline. In that situation, we're going to have a very high burn rate when it comes to the budget. We'll try to get as many experts as we can to utilize their expertise and knowledge and skill and try to get that project out the door as quickly as we can with the features in place. Now, the reason for this video is I was prompted by one of our clients who has a project they're running, and their client wants all three. The client dictated the budget, the client dictated the features, and the client dictated the timeline. The issues they're running into is they're not going to get the project done with the features in place in the timeline that the client wants. So what are they doing? Well, the way they've handled it is they've taken the features and the budget constraints, and the timeline is going to be extended. That's really the only option. If those features are set in stone, then you have to extend the timeline. That's the only way you can save money, is by trying to find a more affordable resource than what you were using before and try to get that project over the finish line with the budget and the features in place. It's really unfortunate when that happens, but it does happen. Our job as a software development team is to bring those to the client early, or your boss, or your manager, whatever your situation is. Raise the flag and say, you know what? I know we want all these three things. We want to keep this budget, we want the timeline, and we need the features, but they all can't happen. We need to pick two of them. We're going to be over budget, or we're going to be late delivering the project. But when we raise the flag ahead of time, the client knows that that's a potential issue. And then when that issue arises, or if it arises, then they're informed and they can make a better decision. It's always easy to look at a project and say, oh, this is why it failed, or this is why it's over budget, this is why it's late. But it's really difficult going into a project to foresee why that's going to happen. That's where experts come in, and that's where the whole team needs to come together and figure out what the best solution is for the project. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got something out of it. Please comment below. I'd love to start a conversation with you. Subscribe, turn on notifications. You'll get notified anytime we release another video. And if you want coaching, if you want help with your software projects, visit us at codeprogram.io, and we'd love to help you.